What if the strength you admire in Abraham Lincoln was not the absence of despair, but the refusal to let despair become the author of his actions? Society often teaches you to hide grief, doubt, and depression until you appear invulnerable. Lincoln suggests a more difficult possibility. Sorrow may remain while duty advances. Resolve is not always a bright conviction. Sometimes it is the decision to continue without one. Abraham Lincoln's inner life cannot be reduced to a convenient legend. Accounts by William Herndon, his law partner and biographer, describe periods of profound melancholy, while letters from the 1840s reveal a man acquainted with discouragement and emotional heaviness. Yet history does not permit a clinical diagnosis from a distance. The psychologically careful view distinguishes documented suffering from later interpretation, refusing both romanticization and denial. Stoicism is the philosophy of directing your judgment and conduct toward what lies within your influence, while meeting the uncontrollable without surrendering your character. Lincoln did not practice a polished version of ancient Stoicism sealed away from human feeling. His example was more demanding. He felt the weather of his mind, but he did not grant every emotional storm authority over his next responsibility. There is another idea beneath his story. Existentialism is the view that human beings must confront an uncertain world and create meaning through chosen responsibility, rather than waiting for meaning to arrive fully formed. Lincoln lived inside that uncertainty. Political failure, personal loss, and national violence offered no guarantee that his efforts would succeed. Still, he acted as though responsibility mattered even when certainty had vanished. For you, this distinction is decisive. A difficult mind is not automatically a profound mind, and suffering does not guarantee wisdom. Pain can narrow perception as easily as it can deepen compassion. Lincoln's achievement was not that depression made him superior. It was that he developed practices and relationships that helped him keep functioning, thinking, and choosing while pain remained present. In daily life, this means separating an emotion from a verdict. Doubt may report fear, but it does not prove incapacity. Grief may announce absence, but it does not define the limits of your future. Lincoln's work as a lawyer, storyteller, and public figure gave structure to days that might otherwise have been governed by inward darkness. Work did not erase the sorrow. It gave sorrow a boundary. His humor deserves careful attention. Lincoln's stories and wit were not proof that he was carefree, nor should they be treated as a simple mask. Humor can create distance from anguish, allowing the mind to examine what would otherwise overwhelm it. Used honestly, it does not deny tragedy. It changes the angle from which tragedy is endured, preserving enough mental space for judgment. That mental space matters because of cognitive dissonance, the psychological tension created when your beliefs, feelings, and actions conflict. Lincoln could feel despair and still perform public duty. He could mourn privately while making decisions that affected millions. The tension was real. Rather than resolving it through comforting illusion, he carried opposing truths together. Sorrow was present and action was still required. The pressure intensified as the United States fractured. Lincoln was not merely managing a private struggle. He was leading amid political humiliation, war, moral conflict, and uncertainty over the nation's future. His steadiness was therefore not the calm of a man untouched by events. It was a form of self-leadership under conditions that would have destabilized almost anyone. In 1862, grief entered the White House with the death of Willie Lincoln. The loss of his son altered the emotional landscape of Lincoln's presidency. It would be careless to claim that tragedy simply improved him. Grief does not arrive as a benevolent instructor. It can disorient, exhaust, and isolate. Yet Lincoln had to continue carrying public responsibility while absorbing a private wound that could not be legislated away. This is where the mythology must be challenged. We often say that hardship builds character, as though suffering were a reliable machine that produces greatness. It is not. Suffering can break routines, distort judgment, and diminish hope. What shaped Lincoln was not pain alone, but his response to pain through work, reflection, humor, faith, and connection with people capable of challenging and supporting him. William Seward became one such presence in Lincoln's political life. Their relationship represented more than cooperation between officials. It showed the value of close political relationships when personal judgment is under immense strain. Self-leadership does not mean solitary leadership. A person who refuses every influence may imagine independence, while actually becoming captive to unexamined impulses. Lincoln's religious reflection also developed within uncertainty rather than easy certainty. His language increasingly confronted providence, moral responsibility, and the terrible cost of war. Reflection in this sense was not escape from decisions. It was a way of placing decisions inside a larger moral frame. He did not need perfect answers before acting. He needed a conscience capable of examining the consequences. The Emancipation Proclamation emerged from that demanding intersection of principle, power, and circumstance. It was not merely a private emotional breakthrough translated into policy. It belonged to the pressures of war and the evolving moral and political struggle over slavery. Yet Lincoln's capacity to act amid doubt mattered. Resolve became meaningful when it entered public consequence, where intentions could no longer remain safely private. Shadow work is the deliberate examination of the traits, fears, and motives you prefer to hide from yourself. Lincoln's story invites this work without pretending to reveal every hidden chamber of his mind. You can ask where your melancholy becomes identity, where your ambition seeks applause, and where your moral language conceals fear. The point is not self-condemnation. It is the recovery of choice. Consider the way modern success is measured. Speed, confidence, visibility, and relentless optimism are praised as evidence of strength. Lincoln complicates that standard. His life suggests that a leader may be hesitant without being weak, sorrowful without being useless, and reflective without being indecisive. The question is not whether you feel uncertain. The question is whether uncertainty has become your excuse for refusing responsibility. There is a quiet discipline in knowing what cannot be repaired. Grief may never become acceptable, and depression may not disappear because you have discovered a noble purpose. Lincoln's example must not be used to shame anyone who struggles, nor to replace appropriate care with heroic endurance. His lesson is narrower and stronger. Suffering should be acknowledged accurately, while the next ethical action is still considered. This creates a different model of resilience. Resilience is not emotional invulnerability. It is the capacity to remain oriented toward chosen values while adapting to pain, uncertainty, and loss. Sometimes it looks like public labor. Sometimes it looks like seeking counsel, admitting limitation, or allowing grief to exist without turning it into a permanent command. Strength may be quiet because it is busy preserving what matters. The ambitious person faces a modern version of Lincoln's conflict. You may be expected to project certainty while privately questioning your direction, your worth, or the cost of your goals. That conflict can produce cognitive dissonance, especially when the identity you display begins to contradict the life you actually experience. Instead of polishing the image, examine the contradiction. It may contain the first honest evidence of a new path. Lincoln did not resolve every doubt before moving forward. He learned imperfectly to move with doubt without allowing it to dictate the entire field of action. That is a more credible form of courage than permanent confidence. The mind may remain divided, yet the will can still select a direction. Over time, repeated choices create a character that emotion alone could never have designed. His legacy therefore belongs neither to optimism nor to despair. It belongs to moral endurance. He made room for sorrow while demanding action, carried private anguish without making the nation responsible for curing it, and used language, labor, reflection, and alliance to remain engaged with an immense historical burden. His darkness was not a superpower. His stewardship of it became part of his strength. You do not need to imitate Lincoln's suffering to learn from his resolve. Do not manufacture hardship and do not romanticize the wounds you already carry. Name them precisely. Question the stories they impose. Seek trustworthy human connection. Return to the work that expresses your deepest obligations, not merely the work that earns approval. Your destiny is not mastered by feeling nothing. It is mastered when feeling no longer rules alone. The final lesson is almost severe in its simplicity. You may never receive the certainty you are waiting for. The grief may remain, the doubt may return. The public world may misunderstand you, and the private world may offer no immediate relief. Still, a life can be shaped by the next honest decision. Lincoln's resolve was not the triumph of a man over sorrow. It was the disciplined refusal to let sorrow have the final word.